The market buzzed with its usual clamor, vendors shouting prices, children weaving through crowds, the heavy scent of roasted corn lingering in the dusty afternoon air. Among the rushing feet, Mary bent low with her broom and battered metal pan, sweeping the littered paths of the upscale shopping plaza. At just 22, she had already known too much struggle. Each sweep of her broom felt like a fight against the life that seemed determined to bury her dreams. But Mary never complained. Every morning, she tied her faded scarf over her thick braids, straightened her worn-out uniform, and offered a small, quiet smile to the world. Hope was her only currency. In a city like Lagos, hope was sometimes the only thing that separated survival from despair. It was on one of those blistering afternoons, as the sun hammered down mercilessly, that Mary noticed her. An elderly woman, frail and trembling, stood by the entrance of the plaza. Her wrapper was dusty, her sandals barely holding together, and her face, though wrinkled with age, still held an undeniable dignity. She clutched a worn-out handbag close to her chest, looking utterly lost amid the rushing tide of people. Mary's heart tugged at the sight. Most passers-by barely spared the old woman a glance, stepping around her like she was invisible. Some muttered in annoyance. But Mary, wiping her sweaty forehead, dropped her broom without a second thought and approached the woman. "Ma, are you okay?" she asked softly, steadying the woman by the elbow. The old woman gave a shaky smile. "My daughter. I came to see my son. They say he's here, but these big buildings confuse me." Mary immediately understood. Lagos was full of high-rises and confusing plazas. To someone unfamiliar with the city's modern chaos, it could be terrifying. "Don't worry, Ma," Mary reassured her. "I'll help you." Ignoring the curious stares from others, Mary guided the woman to a shaded bench. She bought a sachet of cold water from her meager savings and handed it over with a smile. The old woman accepted it with trembling hands, murmuring blessings under her breath. As they sat, Mary listened to her story. The woman had traveled from her village, hours away, believing her son still worked as a clerk in one of the offices. She didn't know he had risen far beyond that. She didn't even have a phone number, only an old letter he had written months ago. Something about the woman's pure-hearted trust, her journey filled with love and sacrifice, resonated deeply with Mary. Even though her own life was hanging by a thread, Mary felt a fierce desire to help this woman find her son. She stood up with determination. "Come, Ma. We'll find him together." As she led the frail woman into the towering glass building, Mary had no idea that the woman she had just helped was the mother of the very man who owned the plaza she swept every day. And life, with all its strange twists, was about to turn Mary's world upside down. The lobby of the glass building felt like another world. The cool, air-conditioned space smelled of polished marble and fresh flowers. The walls were adorned with expensive art, each piece speaking of wealth, status, and privilege. Mary felt out of place, her worn shoes clicking awkwardly against the gleaming floor. The stark contrast between the world outside and this pristine space made her feel small, invisible even. The old woman, however, seemed at ease despite the unfamiliar surroundings. She sat down in one of the plush chairs near the reception, her eyes darting around in search of her son. Mary approached the front desk, where a sharply dressed receptionist glanced up at her with a raised eyebrow. "How can I help you?" the receptionist asked, her tone almost condescending. "I'm looking for someone," Mary said, trying to keep her voice steady. "A man, he works here. I think he's in charge." The receptionist's lips thinned into a polite smile. "Do you have an appointment or a name?" Mary hesitated, her eyes flicking back to the elderly woman who sat patiently, her frail hands clasped tightly in her lap. I'm not sure. But I think his name is Mr. Okoye. He's my son's boss." The receptionist's face changed slightly. She typed quickly into the computer. After a moment, she looked back up, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Okoye is the CEO," she said. "You must be mistaken." "Are you sure?" Mary felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "CEO?" She didn't know what to say, but the older woman beside her was now standing, looking around anxiously. "Please, Ma, sit down," Mary urged her gently, though her own hands were beginning to tremble. The receptionist gave an indifferent glance at the woman, then back to Mary. Just then, a tall, commanding figure stepped out of a nearby elevator. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his gait confident. He paused when his eyes landed on the elderly woman sitting by the reception, and something flickered in his gaze. His jaw tightened, and he approached slowly. "Mother," he said, his voice a mix of surprise and disbelief. Mary turned to see the recognition in his eyes, then followed his gaze to the old woman, who was now standing in a mix of shock and joy. You're my son," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. For a long moment, the two stared at each other. It was a look of reunion, but also one of deep pain. The man who stood before them, a powerful CEO with everything to his name, seemed to falter for the first time in years. His mother's eyes shimmered with tears, but his expression was conflicted. "Mother," he repeated, but there was a strain to his voice. "What are you doing here?" Mary, standing nearby, watched the interaction with a growing sense of confusion. The CEO's face, though masked with professionalism, hinted at a buried unease. There was something about the way he spoke to the woman, something distant. "I came to find you, my son," the old woman said, her voice shaking. "I traveled so far. I didn't know you had become so important. I didn't know you were this high up." The CEO looked around, his eyes flashing with discomfort as he glanced at the crowd. He hesitated before taking a deep breath and then looked at Mary for the first time, really looked at her. His expression shifted, surprise mixed with suspicion. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice suddenly cold. I helped her," Mary said, her heart racing. "She was lost outside, and I just guided her here." The CEO's gaze sharpened. "You're a cleaner here?" Mary nodded. "Yes, sir." A pause lingered in the air, thick with tension. His gaze flicked between Mary and his mother, and for a moment, Mary thought she saw a flash of something deeper, guilt, perhaps, or resentment, but it was gone too quickly to pin down. Then, in an almost dismissive tone, he turned back to his mother. "You shouldn't have come here. I told you not to. It's not the right place for you. You should have stayed where you were." The words stung Mary more than she cared to admit. There was a coldness in his voice, as if the mother who had given him life was nothing more than an inconvenient relic of his past. But the old woman stood tall, her frailty gone, replaced by a quiet strength. "I came because I needed to see you. I needed to know if you remembered where you came from." The CEO looked away, his posture stiff. He couldn't meet his mother's gaze, and it was clear now that something between them had broken. Something deep, something buried for years. Mary, feeling out of place, shifted her weight uncomfortably. She didn't understand the layers of history between them, but it was impossible not to feel the growing tension. And as the CEO's eyes flicked back to her, she could feel his unspoken words weighing heavily. The silence stretched between them, unbearable and thick. The CEO glanced at his mother, then at Mary, before finally turning his gaze to the polished floor beneath his feet. The weight of the moment was crushing, and Mary could feel the sorrow in the air like a heavy fog. His mother, still standing, reached out a trembling hand toward him. "I raised you with all I had, even when we had nothing," she whispered. "I worked so hard for you to have a better life. But I never thought this is what it would cost us. I never thought you would forget where you came from." The CEO's lips tightened into a thin line, and he took a step back, almost imperceptible but telling enough. Mary could see it now. The man standing before them was not the confident, powerful CEO everyone knew. He was a boy who had lost touch with his roots, with the love and sacrifices that had shaped him. "I haven't forgotten," he said quietly, though his voice betrayed a hint of guilt. I can't afford distractions. This life, this business, it's not something I can just walk away from." "You don't understand, mother." The old woman's face, etched with lines of both wisdom and pain, softened. "I understand more than you think, son. I may not understand your world, but I understand that you need more than just success. You need family. You need love." For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Mary, feeling the tension rise, couldn't help but wonder how far the CEO's ambition had driven him to neglect the one thing that truly mattered, his own flesh and blood. The CEO's gaze dropped to the floor once more, his eyes filled with an emotion that was hard to decipher. It was regret, but it was also something else, something that Mary could see in the tightness of his shoulders and the sharpness of his breath. He didn't want to lose his mother, but he was too far gone in the life he had built to turn back. Turning away, he ran a hand through his hair and exhaled deeply. "I can't go back. You should have stayed in the village. I told you that." Mary, her heart aching at the exchange, stepped forward. She wasn't sure why, but something compelled her to speak. "Sir, your mother didn't come here for money or status. She came because she loves you. No matter how far you go, love is something that doesn't change. It stays with you, even when you forget." The CEO's eyes snapped toward her, and for a moment, it felt like the world paused. Mary wasn't sure where the words came from, but they had slipped out in the heat of the moment. The silence that followed felt heavy, but it was also charged with a shift, a realization that perhaps the young cleaner's words held more truth than he cared to admit. The old woman gave Mary a grateful look, and then, with a slow but deliberate movement, she turned back to her son. "I will leave now. I don't want to be a burden. But I want you to know, I will always love you. No matter what." As the old woman slowly made her way toward the exit, Mary watched the CEO's eyes follow her, the facade of strength he had carefully crafted starting to crack. He stood frozen for a long time, his fingers gripping the edges of the marble desk as if holding onto some fragile memory of his past. It wasn't until his mother had reached the door that he moved. His steps were slow, hesitant, and the sound of his shoes echoed through the lobby as he approached her. "Mother," he began, his voice softer now, laden with emotion. The old woman turned, her face a mix of exhaustion and hope. "Yes, my son. I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been wrong. I've been too focused on what doesn't matter. I haven't been the son you needed." Tears welled up in the old woman's eyes, but she nodded, a tender smile spreading across her face. "You've always been my son. No matter what." Mary, watching from the sidelines, felt the weight of the moment settle into her chest. It wasn't a perfect reunion. It wasn't the grand apology that would instantly fix everything. But it was a beginning, a moment of understanding, of broken barriers and healing hearts. The CEO, now standing beside his mother, turned to Mary, his eyes a little softer than before. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for showing me what I'd forgotten." Mary nodded, feeling the warmth of the moment and the gravity of her role in it. She had helped guide a lost woman back to her son, but in doing so, she had also helped remind him of something far more important than wealth and success: love, family, and the true cost of ambition. As they left the building together, Mary's heart felt lighter, and the bustling streets outside no longer seemed so oppressive. She hadn't saved the CEO from his problems, but she had reminded him of what truly mattered. And in that, perhaps, was the most significant victory. True success isn't measured by the titles we hold or the wealth we accumulate. It's found in the relationships we cherish and the love we nurture. Never forget where you come from, and always remember the people who truly matter, those who love you, even when the world has forgotten.